Welcome TAT Lone Star Class D Amplifier Seminar with Mr. Joe Goswami.
And Mr. Manny.
I'm Manny. Thank you guys. All right. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Manny.
You got it.
So I did this seminar, and it's almost like this is my. Was it a lot of YouTubers like to have a showroom, right? So when Daryl proposed the idea, and then I got Fidelis AV involved, Orchard Audio, Chesky Audio, and Argent Pure. I said, well, if I'm going to be at the show and this is going to be my ego gratification room, because another YouTuber that's got to have a room of his own, right? Pushing other people's stuff. I said, why don't I just do a seminar, right? So I'm going to do this from a user's perspective, not so much an engineering perspective, because for the engineering side, that's Leo, that's Luca, that's Ernie and those guys. So, like, you guys know the history, right? Class D amps used to suck, right? And I mean, this goes back to the Bascom H. King, servo amps that were on the Infinity IRS 5s and stuff like that. They were good for bass, but they sucked at the mid-range and the treble, right? My history is about 6 years ago, because I'm a technology guy first, and if it sounds good, that's a bonus, right? And like my background is RF electronics, right? But for the last 10 years, I've been doing IT and Wi-Fi stuff, but I still do the tinkering and the soldering. So like when I got the PS Audio M700s, right? What they called the Stellar Stack, right? And basically Darren Myers put a JFET input stage and tore out the input stage of the Ice Power amp, right? And I said, oh, okay, so he's just using the Ice Power as a gain block, right? Darren Myers, who's not with them now, he moved to Parasound, but he was doing all their Class D stuff, the M1200 tube hybrid, and then the M700s that I had. But then Leo from Orchard, he sent our club these little Star Crimsons, and when I first saw them, I'm like, where the hell is the power switch on this? And then he calls me, there's a power up sequence, and I said, dude, for people like me, this is not good. I'm gonna blow this thing up. And I didn't blow up the demos that he sent. I was very careful with it, but then that time he had an integrated amplifier with the same little Star Crimsons that I always bragged that I love to blow up. And I sure as hell blew them up on a pair of tannoys, right? And so when Leo came out with the Ultra, he made it Joe-proof. So the input amplitude's protected. If you reverse the polarity of the DC, it'll shut down instead of blow up. And if you put a short across the speaker terminals, it'll just gracefully mute, and away we go. But the thing is, guys like Leo, they're brilliant engineers, but they're crappy audiophiles, and he's a really even worse DJ, right? And then he'll do his homework on what sound characteristic people like, and he'll go for that target, but then he'll have people listen to his stuff before he releases it. And when I got his Star Crimsons, it was a hell in heaven difference from the PS Audio stuff. And I thought, he's doing this with a little module that's, yeah, the little ones. So, I mean, there's so many good Class D amps out there. And now that the GANFET stuff, which is what the technology Leo's amp's based on, you've got Peachtree doing it. Techniques was the first one, right? Now the Chinese market's getting in on it with SMSL, and now I know Lave. Yeah. So, the competition's out there. But the good thing with Leo's stuff is it's made in North America. So I don't want to talk about tariffs and all that crazy stuff, but
Atmosphere makes
yeah, well, Ralph, I know Ralph. Ralph is good people, man, and he likes Leo stuff. But a guy like Ralph Karsten, and he's been on record. He's told me, he was in a recent YouTube video with Jason. He makes these wonderful OTL tube amps, but he could care less about them. His claim to fame has been balanced tube amps from day one for the last 40 years. So when I talked to him, he says, look, man, I'm not going to build a 500 watt monster like Leo's, right? I'm going to build a GAN-fed amp that sounds like my tube amps. And if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be him, right? But him and Leo are not direct competitors because Leo's market is, you know, more hard to drive amps kind of thing, right? Like you can go 200, like he doesn't advertise his 2 ohm rating, but when somebody asks him, it's 250 watts max because he doesn't want people doing stupid things with them, right? But when he advertises 500 watts at 4 ohms, it's an actual, there's Chinese 500 watts and then there's real 500 watts, right? And that's the way I look at it, you know? And at the end of the day, if it doesn't sound good, then what's the point of doing all this, right? And so I've been a huge champion for the Class D stuff, but I've also had tubes, right? So I had the Black Ice Audio F100 tube amps. I loved those. I've had my only Class A B amps that I've ever had are the old Adcoms, 545s, 555s. I managed to make my 55 or 555 catch fire one day, but that's another story. But yeah, it's, you know, and I've said this over and over and over again to people from day one. They're like, oh, but it sounds like Class D, it sounds like this. I says, but have you actually sat down and listened to it, right? Like, and my preference is, and I say this to anybody that owns either Orchard Audio, Peachtree, or whatever, get a tube preamp or get a JFET preamp, and you're all set. You know, you're off to races. In fact, I'm not going to talk about the room too much because I want all you guys to hear it. So Thursday was setup day. It was chaos, whatever. I was just happy to get sound in the room. Friday, it's not broken, Joe. Don't break it. Just leave it alone. People were happy, no problems, right? And then after, right around 5 o'clock, I said, okay, now I'm going to start tinkering. So now I've got Leo's amps that were running yesterday, and now I've got the tricked out Leo amps, the Argent Pure ones with the solid silver wire. It's the same Orchard module inside. It's a different power supply. Leo's done all the measurements. Because he's our OEM, I think I said that right. He has to make sure that if we're going to put his product in our chassis, it's got to match. You know, if we're advertising 500, that means it's got to be, you know, so the power supply, filtering, everything's got to be perfect his way. And it is. So I hooked up the solid silver wired Orchard amps. Everybody so far, I've got nothing but good comments. And then my new friend Bob across the way there lent me his little magic box, and I plugged it in this morning before the show started, and I'm like, wow. And yeah, it's no, it's not even. It's kind of like it'll do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you know, so I'll let you guys hear it upstairs after, but yeah, I mean, so I'm going to give you another story, and this is a fun one. So I have a new friend. Manny knows who my new friend is, okay?
He has a lot of new friends.
So Ravi Vilnati, he represents Final Audio Electrostatics, which hopefully I'll be getting mine at the end of this month, praying, right? And he also represents Coda Amplifiers. Now, this would have been November of last year. I go to his house, and I just met him at the Dan D'Agostino event, and I'm gonna pause there, guys, because there's a video I want you guys to see. So you guys know Dan D'Agostino, right? Yeah. He is an awesome person and a huge supporter of our Arizona Audio Video Club. So back in October, I was the first one on YouTube, with the permission of Bill McKeegan, who's Dan's right hand, to put Dan on a hot mic for an hour and a half. And he was awesome, man. I mean, this man is like a wealth of knowledge, and you know, and I always learn something when I go to his factory tours, right? You know, and he's like such a down-to-earth person, right? Don't worry about it. I'm like when my kid used to cry, I just tune it out. So we did the factory tour, and then Ravi, who I just met that day, asked the question. And I want you guys to see this. It's good. It's good. I mean, his answer was not arrogant. It wasn't being condescending. But what he was saying, he's correct.
What are your thoughts on the Class D trend?
I think Class D is fine if you wanna have a boombox or one of those speakers that you hook up with Bluetooth. I mean, if you put a square wave, 10K square wave into a switching amp, it doesn't look like that when it comes out. So I'm one of those guys that whatever you put in here, I want it to come out bigger and be exactly the same. If it doesn't look exactly the same, I don't care what somebody says about filters or anything. The amplifier is not doing its job.
There's a compromise.
Yeah. We're not there yet. Maybe, these amplifiers, transistors, how old are solid state amps? I mean, from the 50s, right? There were some solid state amps, horrible ones, but yeah, because there was no, but you go there and then you get to here. Class D amplifiers hadn't had anywhere near that time to develop.
To mature.
Give it the same amount of time and maybe they will be. Hopefully I won't be here, but
That's what I wanted you guys to. And the thing was, his answer was as honest, and it's the truth. It's the truth. It's he's been doing this stuff for over 50 years, right? And he started off with transformers, right? So when Ravi asked him the question, because I didn't have the balls to do it, I'll tell you, right? I was like, but the way he said it, it made sense. I showed that video to Leo, and he's like, Joe, I can do that. I says, dude, you talk to Dan D'Agostino and tell him, because me, it's not going to work. And but yeah, it's what he said is right. It's like the GANFET stuff. It's getting there, right? But so the argument that Ravi and I have is he has these 60-pound Coda Class A sliding into Class AB amps, right? And they sound great. He puts them on his big flagship and all that stuff. And I'm like, well, Ravi, I'm not going to buy your speakers if my amplifier doesn't sound good on it. So I'm getting the Model 12s, the two models below. I walked into his house and I got the amp upstairs that I took to his house. I brought in my over-modified 3-channel Orchard, beast, and hooked it up to the 12s. I said, okay, sold. In his crappy room with no treatment and all that, I said, I'm listening for the sound signature, and they're electrostatic, so I know what I got to listen for. If I don't hear it, then there's no sale, right? And he's always going back and forth with me, and I says, well, dude, nobody wants a 60-pound amp anymore. I know, I'm going to be 56 this year, right? And I'm tired of lifting heavy amps. And I've got friends of mine, right? Guy up in outside San Francisco, a good friend of mine. Kurt had the John Curl JC1s, the first version, not the new one. And they're great amps, but they're 60 pounds a pop, right? And so he sold those, and he bought one of Leo's stereo amps when we did when he did his first show in the Phoenix Speaker Fest. And he was like, damn. And then I did the silver upgrades for him when I went to go visit him last year, right? And another guy he had the PS Audio, the BHK 250.
When you say Leo's stereo amps.
Yeah, the Orchard Audio. Yeah, Leo is in New Jersey. The joke we have is only Canadians are allowed to build his amplifiers. So I used to do his amps in Phoenix, but now I'm doing the Argent Pure stuff. But he's got another guy up in Canada, in the Muskoka area, that builds all the Ultra products. Then another friend of his and mine in Arkansas, Philip, he builds all the streamers, all the Little Star Crimsons and stuff like that. So then this way Leo focuses on the company now, because he quit his day job 2 years ago. So, and he's doing well. He's doing.
Have you heard of the new 25s?
The which 25s?
SK25s?
Oh, the ones that Leo came out with? Eventually.
I had the prototype at home.
Oh, nice. Nice.
He loaned them to me.
Nice, because he won't lend them to me because he knows I'll blow them up.
Are they Class D amps?
Yeah, always. The only Class AB amp that Leo has is the Valencia headphone. And that was a partnership that he did with Steve from Z Reviews. So it's a headphone, fully balanced headphone amp. It's Leo's first Class AB design. And originally, like I said, Leo is an engineer. He's not an audio guy. So Steve came up to him and he says, let's make a headphone amp. And he says, I don't know nothing about headphone amps. He said, well, you're an engineer. You'll figure it out. So Steve voiced it. Leo did the circuitry. But it'll drive a 10 watt, it's got speaker terminals on the back. So you could drive a 10 watt high efficiency speaker with it if you wanted to. But it'll literally drive any headphone on the planet, and Steve is the guy to voice it because he's got every headphone on the planet, right? And I mean, I took a listen to it when I was at Expona in the ear gear room, and it's good. But I got my electrostatic, so I'm spoiled. So when I listen to dynamic headphones, it just doesn't do it for me, eh? But that's, I know, I went off on a tangent. But yeah, I mean, now I'm gonna shift it over to you guys because I wanted to keep it so that I jabber away for half of this, and this is the first time I'm doing a seminar, so I really, really appreciate you guys coming, you know, and then for the show to kind of, you know, let me be the guinea pig, so to speak, you know.
Does he use modules, some kind of module inside those?
So it's his design, yes. So it's his design. So the modules that he uses in the amps that you saw upstairs, that's all his design from input to output. The only thing that he doesn't design is the switching power supplies. And he also has a toroidal version, but every time he does the toroidal, they get sold out. And I'm partly to blame for that because 3 years ago I came to Leo and I was building amps for him at the time, and again, nothing's for free. I got to pay for my own modules too. Even when I blow them up, I got to pay for them again, trust me. So I said, Leo, I want to build the world's stupidest Class D amp with your modules. He says, what do you mean? I said, I want to build a 5-channel amplifier for my home theater, and I want to get the biggest toroidal I can find. So I went on Antec New Jersey's website, and he had an 1800 VA. Leo did the calculations. Back then I was running Klipsch speakers in the front and my Bose 901s for my surrounds. So Leo did the calculations. He says, okay, with that and his amps, with the impedance, speaker impedance, he says, you'll get about 300 to 350 watts per channel, right? Because I'm sharing one power supply. So, and it sounded great, right? It sounded great. Then I started moving it around. So I had a 40-pound transformer, 10-pound aluminum chassis that a friend of mine designed for me, plus all the components inside. And then when Leo saw the big tank capacitors and stuff like that, he says, okay, before Joe blows this up, I'm gonna build him a proper rectifier board. And he even put what I call the Joe lights on there. So when you turn the amp off on the power supply, there's 2 LEDs that tells you, dummy, if you're gonna touch it, discharge the capacitors first with a load, right? And because, yeah, trust me, I've done it too. You know, there's plus minus 40 volts and there's a lot of current on those lines, and oops, yeah. So I built the thing, could barely move it around, so then I sold two of the modules, went to Argent Pure, which are the amps you'll see upstairs. And then I had 3 channels left, so I grabbed some switching supplies, shoved it into a chassis, made it work. And then last year I got the crazy idea before I went to Ravi's house. I had those monster micro audio 1800 watt power supplies, so I'm running one on each Orchard module with solid silver all the way. And that's the amp I took over to Ravi's, and I'm still waiting for my delivery. That's all I can say. All right, guys, I'm gonna shut up now, and any questions, please, doesn't matter. Anything goes, just like the playlist upstairs, anything goes.
So what's unique about his Class D compared to like
Yeah.
ICE or some
So,
of the other ones?
so not just take it from me, everybody that's had his GAN-fed amps have noticed there's more of a tube-like sound to it, right? Even without a tube preamp, if you just run directly out of his DAC like I was yesterday, it's very smooth, right? Again, all the analog stuff, all the op-amp stuff, that's all his design from input to output. And the feedback that I get from customers is it's a lot smoother sounding. One guy had the Pass Labs, I think it was the Pass 250, and he said he preferred Leo's because there was more resolution. There was a lot more air to the sound, and yeah, he just sold his pass amp, and he said, yeah, and it's like 20 pounds and a little bit, right?
And the woofer control is like,
Oh yeah, yeah, because these guys are customers too, eh? So they can vouch for whatever BS I'm dishing here. These guys can vouch for me.
What did you say?
the woofer control, like the bass, like
Oh, yeah.
the definition in the bass, like there's nothing loose or floppy, nothing going on there, right? So really, so it's a good amp for everything. So if you're into electronic music or jazz, whatever, like lots of air on the top end. Pretty much like, so the only difference, and I'm a tube guy too, right? Literally right now in my house I have 300B separate. So I have a 300B amplifier and a preamplifier. Okay, and they're single-ended. They're not push-pull, none of that push. So preamp running Orchard Audio, monoblocks into the magnipans. That's like the sound you want.
Yeah.
Why? Because it gives you the holography. It gives you those effects that you look
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
The size of the sound stage, the positioning, and then you get a lot of resolution. The difference, and again, I a lot of times, I have this discussion with my friends and everybody. They're like, "Why do you want to put tubes?" I'm like, if you can get away with them, get away with them. The problem is that, if you don't put tubes, you don't get certain characters you're after.
Yeah.
No class D, no class AB can do it. Like if somebody says, "Oh yeah, this class AB is gonna give me a huge holography," it's probably the speakers. It's not just class AB. It's like a combination. It's always right.
Yeah,
Obviously,
no,
it's very difficult to take
that's a fair
stuff
statement.
away and say that, "Oh, this is doing it and the other thing is doing it." But so like a lot of people like horns. A lot of people don't like horns.
Yeah.
What I like about horns is that you have this floating in the air effect going on. You get the huge dispersion depending on your horn shape and everything. But then if you're right in front of it, it's shouting.
Yeah.
It's like, right?
Yeah,
a lot of
so-
people are very sensitive to
So
it.
what Arun is saying, and he's correct, I ran Cornwall 4s on my Orchard amps for the longest time, and where the mid-range is amazing, the bass grip on those big 15-inch Eminence woofers that they use is great, but I had a really, really hard time getting that phantom center, and because they're Cornwalls, you're supposed to have them in the corner of the rooms. Now I can pull them out in my living room, but there's no egress. Everybody's gonna have to, so that's not gonna work. Then I got the Black Ice Audio F100s, and all of a sudden, boom, everything locked in.
What is that?
They're tube monoblocks, right? So you can put KT88s, KT170s, whatever, 6550s. When I got those with the stock PS Vane KT88s that they shipped, all of a sudden, boom, everything locked in. Now, I don't blame the amplifier for that, but like what Arun said, this is the problem with horns and Class D, right? And my setup was living proof of it. Because as soon as I got magnipans in there, when I got any, or even just skinny towers, I had the ELACs from the giveaway a few years ago, skinny towers, Lukacheski speakers, right? I had the BMRs in my room, right? And amazing, phantom setter, everything with the Orchard amps. But these Cornwalls, I could not get them dialed in without using a tube amplifier, right? And so I was using Leo's amp for my center and my surrounds, so I sold 2 of the channels to Argent, and now I'm building amps for him, right? So, sorry, sir, go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
no,
No, we got time. Nobody's kicking us out yet.
So my question is,
Yeah, go ahead.
there's 2. One, are you, just a clarification,
Yeah.
are you advocating a tube preamp and then Class D amps?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure I was getting it
Or
right.
a good JFET input stage like what Darren did with PS Audio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think is interesting is how people are using Class D amps in their speakers,
Yeah.
right, and creating basically a 3-part stereo. You have
Yeah.
your input,
Yeah.
like your streaming thing, and then
Yeah.
2 speakers, and that's it.
Yeah.
As opposed to, at my house, there's probably 8 different components for
Yeah.
the 5.1 system and the 2.1 system,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
And it drives my wife nuts.
Trust me, I'm still driving mine after 28 years. When she met me and she saw my big DIY towers in the basement, and she's hearing impaired on both sides, eh? So it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. I had my Martin Logans, brought my Martin Logans home, and my wife was like, no.
My wife hated my corn walls, man.
Yeah.
She was.
The SL3s. So they're like,
Yeah.
5.5 feet tall.
Yeah.
They're like, a good 13, 14 inches wide, and they have that big sub in the bottom. And I loved them. They were like close to my in-game speakers, but she was like, nope, can't have these. And they're still there, and my wife is still there, and I'm still married, but, it
So
was.
the joke Ravi and I have, I said, Ravi, my wife and I just finished redoing our floors. Where the hell's my speakers, dude?
Yeah, exactly.
You have a question? Because you sure? You sure? Okay, because I don't want to make sure.
I'll make a comment.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I got Class D and a couple different amplifiers.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Macintosh one that's really designed for home theater use.
Yeah, I remember it.
It's great in my system, just driving the woofers in my little Olympica one, Sound Savers.
Yeah.
Just a great biamp and
Yeah.
setup I have. And then for the tweeters, I got some two monoblocks.
Yeah, that's total.
And
That
then
makes sense.
Before I got the Macintosh Class D, I had a little unit from Audiophonics in France.
Yeah.
It's got Purify in it instead
Yeah,
of Encore
yeah,
and Super 2. So
yeah.
if I'm understanding Leo's,
Yeah.
it's none of those high-pack
No,
or
no,
Encore.
no, it's his own design.
So
Yep, that's
I
correct.
might be interested in checking that out sometime,
Yeah.
even though I heard them yesterday.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
And that's
Yeah.
recording upstairs, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah,
forward to seeing that.
Yeah. Thank you. Arun, go ahead. Yeah.
So you showed us a video of Dan Digger.
Yeah, go ahead,
And
yeah.
he said something which was interesting about Class D.
Yeah.
And then the follow-up from Leo was also interesting because he said like Dan Digger is not right, and he can do something.
working on it.
Can you elaborate on that? Like
So
why
what,
he
what
said
I,
that?
what I want to get Leo to do one day is, with this just simple, grab his iPhone, go in his lab, set everything up live, make the video, and then I'll put it together for him. And again, I love Dan, okay, and I got so much respect for him, and I learned so much from him, right? But I just want to have, it's how can I say this without, it's not that I want to prove Dan wrong, and like I said, I can't do that. Leo can, because he's the design engineer, he's the brains behind it, he can challenge him on stuff like that. I can't. So that's my plan.
So,
That's my plan.
this is a sneaky question from me because
No, go for
I
it,
know
go for
part
it.
of the answer.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the Class D amps, especially the GAN-fed amps they're talking about,
Yeah.
the reason they are what they are, or what we are hearing, and why they are compared to Class A amps, is how fast they are at switching,
Yes, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what really happens is like when you have MOSFETs, all of these are actually switching
Yeah, that's
amps.
right, that's right,
Like
that's right.
there is Class D is not magically like a switching amplifier.
Yeah.
The only difference is that they switch faster, like
Yeah.
20 times faster
Yeah.
than the regular MOSFETs.
Yeah.
And the faster you do it, the switching, those artifacts for the square waves, or
Yeah, the ringing.
the idea
the
basically
ringing,
is that
the
if you have
ringing.
a regular Class A,
Yeah, the
they are
ringing,
very
that's it.
smooth. Like the output is very smooth. With the Class D, they are a bit jagged,
Yeah.
and that's where we hear that digital artifact, right, or the switching artifact, saying that it doesn't sound very pure. It doesn't sound very straightforward, right?
Yeah.
When you switch too fast, the size of those artifacts go smaller, as you. So the answer, and why I think Leo said what he said, he was already doing very fast. I think the exact number is 800 megahertz.
Yeah. I think he's.
Sorry, 800 kilohertz.
I think the module that you have is doing.
Is
over
1.2 gigahertz.
Yes. Yeah.
Gallium nitride?
Yeah, the gallium nitride.
Yeah,
So he basically moved from 800 megahertz switching frequency, 50% more.
And you notice now he's using a WEMA capacitor on the output.
I am, yeah. And those two inductors, right?
Yeah.
So
Other people are using gallium nitride.
there are a lot of other people, and actually, to be honest with you, apart from because Joey's journey is very different. He actually built these amplifiers. I have owned almost a lot of GAN-fed amplifiers. So I've owned and listened to Peachtree. So I have owned in my house Orchard Audio, AGD Productions.
Yeah.
What was the other one? And the Atmosphere ones.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually have experience even the differences between these and what was better in one versus the other.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, as I said, I love single-ended tube amps too. But I love what Class D is doing for me as well, because I'm not like, restricted to my speaker choices anymore.
Yeah.
So how would you compare the AGD versus the Orchard?
Yeah, so I've had they sound very similar than different, in the sense that they both have really nice, natural, not a bloomy like a tube-like, but a very natural and smooth mid-range. They both sound pretty airy and have the control, right? But the AGD Audions that I had, which are like the middle of the pack amp, about 100 watt and like double into, they struggled with some difficult to drive speakers.
They struggle with some
With some loudspeakers, yes. Whereas the Orchard Audio, no, it was a trooper, like all the way. So which speakers they struggled with. So they did very well. In my room, I have a much smaller room. Two power magnifans, they both were amazing. Like I had the LRS Plus with some upgrades.
I've got the MMGs. But,
right, but I wanted to really push those amps to see like how well they do in larger rooms with larger speakers. So one specific example is the Harbeth 40.2s, the anniversary editions.
Yeah.
So we tried like both, and in the same room, everything together, it was a shootout basically between the Orchard Audio and the AGDs. And you can tell the AGDs fall apart really quick. Even the mid-range started sounding not the way they were sounding in my room, right? So the smoothness is gone. You can see the amp was struggling, like here the amp was struggling.
Yeah.
The Orchard Audio didn't matter. Like it was really doing, and I'm talking about the OG monoblocks, the smaller ones.
Yeah. I know
and
the
the
ones
OG
I like
monoblocks don't
the ones
even
I like to
double
blow up,
into
yeah.
like 4 ohms or nothing. They are a symmetric design, right? So they, and I was very, and you know what? After that experience, I sold my AGDs.
Yeah,
and I loved them. I had them for like 2 years.
Arun, it was the same thing with me and my PS Audio. I had 3 M700s and an M350 for the surround channels, and I thought they were the best thing since sliced bread, right? And then when I got the little Star Crimsons, the two-piece, the original, I was like, wow, and he's doing this with this little module, right? And
it doesn't even have an on-off switch.
yeah,
it's
that
very
was
quirky,
the thing,
like
but
the originals.
Hey guys, we got to cut this off because there's another seminar coming. Arun, thank you very much. Thank you guys.